Is Richard Childress Racing's reputation at risk? What really happens behind the scenes? Today, we are digging deep into Richard Childress and his RCR team's events. After what happened with driver Sheldon Creed, is RCR a desirable place to work for future possibility, or is something terrible hiding beneath? Stay tuned to get everything about the horrifying truth about Richard Childress and its past. But before that, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for more whereabouts on NASCAR. NASCAR's got its fair share of driver shakeups and drama, just like we all love to predict who's going to take home the Daytona 500 trophy or snag a spot in the championship 4 at Phoenix Raceway. Usually, during silly season, we get polished press releases where everyone wishes the departing drivers the best in their future endeavors. But when it comes to Richard Childress Racing, it feels like they've taken us back to the days of GTFO, especially with the recent spectacle featuring none other than team owner Richard Childress. Yeah, the guy known for dramatically taking off his watch, and the vice president of competition, Andy Petrie, giving Sheldon Creed a piece of their minds. Now, Creed's off to new adventures in 2024, and RCR's got Jesse Love lined up to take the wheel of the number 2 Camaro next season. But with all the obvious bitterness coming from the ownership when drivers hit the road, you gotta wonder, is RCR a place where drivers really want to set up camp in the future? I've had drivers drive for me before, but nobody as stupid as Sheldon Creed. Well, that statement pretty much sums it all up, doesn't it? Richard Childress, a legend in this sport with decades of impact, has seen his fair share of drivers. But it's hard to fathom why anyone would still want to hop into the driver's seat for him after the fallout from that wild Xfinity Series race at Martinsville Speedway. We get it. Emotions ran high for Austin Hill, Andy Petrie, and Childress, but let's be honest, it seems like a case of bad choices on both sides, resulting in what could have easily been dismissed as just a regular racing deal under different circumstances. We also saw what Robbie Gordon said. Gordon's take on the situation is pointing the finger at Hill, suggesting that he should have just given Creed the room he needed. If that had happened, both Creed and Hill could have continued their battle on another day, and they might have been gearing up to represent the prestigious race team in the Xfinity Series Championship 4 this Saturday, as per the seasoned racer's perspective. Now, to be fair, Gordon might have a bit of a soft spot for Creed. And let's not pretend that the driver of the number 2 Wayland Chevrolet is entirely without fault here. Whether or not he hit the brakes on Hill as they headed into the final lap out of turn 4, it's clear that he raced Hill pretty aggressively right from the moment the green flag waved. And let's not kid ourselves, there's no guarantee that they would have both made it through, even if they hadn't tangled. But they could have at least given it a go without leaning on each other for an entire lap. We don't believe this all began in turn 4 that night. We think it's rooted in some bitterness about Creed moving on, and not just that, but to what's essentially a championship rival at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2024. It's also likely built on a simmering animosity that's been brewing between Hill and Creed over the course of this season. The division within the team might indeed stem from the contrasting performances of Hill and Creed. Hill has certainly been on fire during his 2 years at RCR, racking up wins and consistently being in the championship mix. On the other hand, Creed, who was seen as the rising star after his impressive run in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2020 and 2021, hasn't managed to secure a single win for the team. He's had his fair share of close calls, but it always seems to slip through his fingers, whether it's due to their own mistakes or some overzealous competitors. It's understandable that Petrie and Childress would want to support Hill in this situation. After all, it's human nature to value recent accomplishments. But publicly labeling Creed as the stupidest driver they've ever had is definitely a step too far. And for Petrie to publicly criticize his own driver on pit road in front of the media, fans, and other teams, that's a move that doesn't exactly scream professionalism. Let's take a little trip down memory lane to 2013. Kevin Harvick, the very same guy who played a pivotal role in keeping the organization afloat after the tragic loss of Dale Earnhardt in 2001, was on his way out, set to join Tony Stewart's brand new championship-winning Stewart-Haas racing team for the following season. During a Truck Series race towards the end of that tumultuous season in 2013, Harvick found himself on the receiving end of a bump and spin, courtesy of Ty Dillon, right when the race was getting into its final stages. Chaos erupted, and once the dust had settled, Harvick had some choice words for a national audience. "Punk-ass kids are the reason I'm leaving RCR." This was the first time that the veil was lifted on what might have been happening within the team. Harvick's comments seemed to hint that he was being shown the exit door to make room for Austin Dillon, Childress' other grandson. While this hasn't been publicly confirmed, it did mark the earliest sign of dysfunction within the welcome North Carolina-based race team. And as you've mentioned, there's a more recent incident that follows this pattern. Tyler Reddick was certainly the golden boy over at RCR in 2022, and he'd been shining for them even before that. He snagged an Xfinity Series championship for the team and put together a string of wins in that stellar 2021 season. He made a playoff run that hadn't been seen since the Harvick era, despite Austin Dillon's best efforts. However, Reddick had his sights set on greener pastures, particularly at 23XI Racing, which seemed like a better opportunity. The catch? He was under contract with Childress until 2024. Publicly, Reddick made it clear that he intended to honor his commitment with RCR, but that didn't sit well with the boss. Rumors began to swirl that Childress was absolutely livid over the situation and didn't want Reddick around any longer than 2022. Eventually, they hashed out a buyout agreement, and Reddick made way for Kyle Busch, a swap that turned out to be quite the win-win for both parties. But the underlying issue here is that RCR keeps putting itself in awkward positions when it feels slighted. It's like a case of, if you're not with me, you're against me. Jesse Love is a promising addition to the team talent-wise for the upcoming season. What if he gets a call from Joe Gibbs Racing or Rick Hendrick down the line? Is Love supposed to turn a blind eye to those opportunities just to avoid hurting anyone's feelings? It's a tough situation that the team has put itself in once again. Somewhere along the line, it seems like the folks over at RCR have lost sight of the fact that this sport is also a business. When a driver decides to move on to further their career at another team, it's typically not a personal attack on the organization they're leaving. Regrettably, the actions of Sheldon Creed this past Saturday and the reactions of RCR's top brass have been taken as a personal affront, and it's turning into some bad PR for all parties involved. For Creed, he's off to join a different team, one that's undeniably been a powerhouse in the business for well over 3 decades. As for RCR, they've got themselves a supremely talented prospect who they hope will shape the future of their racing team. But that's the short-term view of things. As long as incidents like this keep cropping up and welcome, it's going to be a tough sell for young talent in the ARCA and Truck Series to feel truly welcomed at one of NASCAR's most pivotal and historic organizations. Unless RCR recognizes and acknowledges the business aspect of this sport, they might find themselves back in the dark days of the early 2000s and the mid to late 2010s, when most of their drivers, except for Harvick during his time there, were consistently falling short of expectations week in and week out. Just like any other profession, there are certain companies that people aspire to work for due to a variety of reasons. It might be a salary bump, better benefits, or the chance to add an impressive job title to their resume. In any field of work, you'll find workplaces that are known to be grueling with high turnover and little long-term stability. On the flip side, there are those that are like forever homes, where you rarely see much staff turnover. The NASCAR world isn't any different. When we talk about teams with a buy and hold philosophy, the first ones that come to mind are often Penske and Joe Gibbs Racing. Look at how long Kurt Busch stuck around at Penske Racing, despite some rough patches in his career, and the fact that he's not exactly known for keeping his cool on the radio. Brad Keselowski only recently left, and Ryan Blaney has been a part of the Penske fold for about a decade now. Joe Gibbs Racing has similar stories with Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, with the latter, interestingly, making a stop at RCR, seemingly as a last resort after 15 seasons at JGR. Now, RCR is a different story altogether. Apart from his grandson, Austin Dillon, on the Cup side, there hasn't been a lot of long-term stability on the driver front. So that's all we've got for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Tell us what you think of the video in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in the upcoming video.